Let us be silent as we listen to Frank and prepare for worship this morning. The prelude this morning is At the Lamb's High Feast We Sing, arranged by Keith Colander. Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou ngā manuhiri. Nau mai haere mai ki te hui o te rānei. Haere mai ki tēnei whare tapu. Haere mai ki te kaupapa o te rā. Ko Rachel Mackintosh tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Welcome all, church whānau and visitors, to this place of worship, virtual and physical, made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for more than 124 years. Welcome to those joining us remotely, to those here in the building, and to those watching the recording at a later time. For those here in person, you are all invited to join us for a cup of coffee or tea and some baking immediately following our service. It is our sacrament of hospitality, and you are most welcome. My name is Rachel Mackintosh, and I'll be leading our service this morning. I, a sometime ardent atheist, welcome you to this Easter service, a non-Christian Unitarian service on the holiest of Christian Sundays of the year. May you find in this moment and in this community the comfort and the challenge, the love and the energy that you need. You are welcome as you are. You find us as we are. My opening words this morning are blessing for the broken-hearted. They're by a United Methodist minister, Jan Richardson. She opens the blessing with a quote from one of our Unitarian forebears, Henry David Thoreau. And he says, "There is no remedy for love but to love more." Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound, when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made precisely for this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. Craig, would you mind lighting the chalice for us? For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for the future, to be alive in our present, we light the flame. Now I invite you to close your eyes and breathe. Breathe in the possibility of today. Breathe out what is done. And now, if you wish, I invite you to recite with me the covenant of our congregation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Now is the time for all who wish to share their joys and sorrows. For those participating online, please raise your electronic hand or just wave at me. For those in the church, please come forward. And for those visitors who may not have seen this before, you have the option of just lighting a candle in silence and placing it in the chalice, or of saying your name and briefly sharing what your joy or concern is. Now I invite you again to close your eyes and breathe. Breathe in the possibility of this day and breathe out what is done. My kōrero this morning is called Resurrection 2026. How do we continue to love now? In the Monty Python film The Life of Brian, set in the time of Jesus, Brian's mother confesses to Brian that his father was not Jewish, but was in fact a Roman centurion. She reminisces, "Promised me the known world, he did." This is funny, as we can see, because you laughed. Although it is generally fatal to a joke to explain it, I am now going to risk killing it by pointing out that it is funny because it plays on the catch cry of disappointed lovers, "Promise me the world." But it also calls us to contemplate our own known world. The life of Brian is about Brian, not about Jesus. Although Brian does almost get the gold, frankincense and myrrh in a brief moment of mistaken identity, because he and Jesus are born at the same time in the same neighbourhood in the Jewish homeland. And so even wise men can get confused. So the known world of Brian and his mother is also the known world of Jesus. In this context, the Easter story occurs in a world of imperial Roman occupation. Marcus Borg, biblical scholar and academic, describes the features of this world, the known world. Rome rules the Jewish homeland through native collaboration from the elite class. Herod Antipas in Galilee and a high priest appointed by Rome in Jerusalem are the senior collaborators. The high priest and other temple authorities are responsible for satisfying both Rome and their Jewish subjects. They have a stake in how Galilean Jews behave, an economic stake in whether they pay tithes to the temple, and a political stake in whether they are restive and prone to rebellion. The system created and ruled by the powerful and wealthy elite serves that elite's financial interests and is economically oppressive to the rest of the population. The conditions in the peasant class are worsening. Herod's family spend lavishly on their regal lifestyle and also on massive building projects, all of which require a larger and larger extraction of peasant production. Rome's client rulers also need to extract wealth from peasants to pay the annual tribute to Rome. The economic consequences for the peasant class are severe. Though life has always been hard, a family that has land can normally produce enough for its own sustenance. But more and more peasant families are losing their land and entering a more desperate kind of poverty. To be landless means living on the edge of destitution, and often over the edge. Jewish responses to the Roman occupation cover a wide spectrum. Some practice accommodation. The temple authorities and the wealthy implement Roman rule while striving to satisfy their Jewish subjects just enough to keep them politically quiet. Accommodation is not simply an upper-class phenomenon, though. Many in the rest of the population also acquiesce, but for a different reason. Their accommodation is resignation. They shrug that this is the way things are, a status quo enforced by imperial power and the threat of imperial violence. At the other end of the spectrum is the way of violent resistance, and the period is marked by periodic outbreaks of armed resistance. The significant number of Jews sufficiently desperate means that violence is never far beneath the surface. And in this world, non-binary as all worlds are, yet another response to Roman occupation is non-violent resistance. Paths of passive non-violent resistance can be taken simply by remaining fiercely loyal to Jewish cultural practices. Paths of active non-violent resistance include mass demonstrations and smaller symbolic acts, of which there are many, organised and disciplined. On this path of non-violent resistance, a historical figure called Jesus becomes an influential teacher, way more influential than Brian. Jesus' teaching involves speaking of love and urging his followers to love above all else. This teaching, in a known world where the violent might of Rome is supposed to prevail above all else, is public criticism. Public criticism then, as now, is a form of resistance. Marcus Borg, who has provided my source for this description of the political scene, was a member of a scholarly group called the Jesus Seminar. The Jesus Seminar has used their scholarship in a search for the historical Jesus. They conclude that Jesus did not predict his own resurrection, nor claim to be the Messiah. This conclusion is not difficult for a Unitarian community to accept. In fact, knowing that Jesus didn't claim things that offend our rational minds may open the hearts of this community to contemplate what the historical Jesus and the life and death of Jesus, and even stories of the resurrection, can teach us today. Jesus' teaching and his public criticism leads to his death. His active, non-violent resistance is a threat to the power of empire. Let's consider just one example of Jesus' resistance. During what Christians now call Holy Week, the week just gone, Jesus overturns the tables of the moneylenders in the temple in Jerusalem. Even those with scant Christian background may have heard this story. It is a story that has been widely misinterpreted. In the sanitized takes on the story that in the intervening centuries have given comfort to the many governing regimes who have ruled in the name of a twisted Christianity, the story is about separating commercial activity from worship. Not so in the world of the time. In the world of the Jewish homeland in the time of Jesus, the story is not about money lending. When Jesus says that the temple has become a den of robbers, he is quoting Jewish scripture from an earlier time, where the words have their own meaning, and he is thus indicting the collaborationist elite who are enforcing the oppressive might of the Roman occupiers. Those listening, particularly the collaborating elite, understand this perfectly. This is the context of our Easter story. Jesus is mocking the power of empire, and so he is put to death by crucifixion. And today is Easter Sunday, the day of the resurrection. Again, even those with that scant Christian background may have heard that on the third day after the crucifixion, Jesus rises from the dead. This is the best known version of the resurrection. For a Unitarian community who has just opened its heart to a Jesus who didn't claim to be the Messiah, how do we keep our hearts open to the resurrection? Let us say that the resurrection is not a bodily thing that happens today, although today is a perfectly good day to celebrate resurrection. If we are still prepared to contemplate resurrection, the question arises, what is resurrected after the death of the active, non-violent resistance teacher who fights Rome by talking of love? I turn now to words spoken in this pulpit some years ago by Clay Nelson to explain the resurrection. Based on my experience of how we humans process major shifts in our lives, I agree with those scholars who think that it took 6 months to a year for his key disciples to experience Easter. I also think the story of the road to Emmaus explains how they experienced Easter. 2 disciples not mentioned previously realized they had encountered the risen Christ after a meal where a stranger took, blessed, broke, and shared bread with them. Only after that moment did they recognize that stranger as Christ. It was in loving fellowship around a meal that many might have experienced their first Easter, with the realization that hate had not killed love. Not even Rome, with all its legions, could do it. The love and compassion they had experienced in the person of Jesus had not died. It lived on in them. That gave them hope and courage to go on. That is what resurrection meant for them. That love lives on may inspire us and give us hope and courage to go on. We may be able to get on board with this notion of the resurrection as the continuation of love after death. Today we are also considering our known world. If continued love is our resurrection, we can be in loving fellowship around a meal, and there we too can experience Easter. And beyond the meal, the food, and the community sustenance that we share this morning, what do we need to do with our love now in our known world? Jesus' love existed as resistance to the Romans. What is our modern Roman occupying force? Who are those who accommodate? Who are those who resist? Is Trump the modern Caesar? Is Putin? Is international capital sweeping all before its path, establishing itself and calling it peace, or at least stability, the new Roman Empire? Is the New Zealand government the modern Herod, the modern temple authority? Are international corporations and local CEOs the enforcers? As local food production is decreed uneconomic, Watties closes its factories, people are thrown out of employment, and we import frozen vegetables from elsewhere. Does might triumph over love when pay equity is swept away at the stroke of a pen, and the vital work of caring for the most vulnerable among us, work of love, is devalued in the name of economic necessity? Are these developments the modern equivalent of the peasants thrown off their land into a more desperate kind of poverty, living on the edge of destitution and often over the edge? Who are those who accommodate, shrugging that this is the way things are? Who are those who resist? Who are those who experience the resurrection as the triumph of love over violence? We Unitarians may follow the path of passive non-violent resistance as we adhere to our living tradition and hang together in community. We Unitarians may follow the path of active non-violent resistance as we oppose move-on orders for the homeless, as we support the Merge Cafe, as we attend No Tyrants protests, as we stand in support of the people of Gaza, against an egomaniacal war on Iran, as we stand with our rainbow whānau in pride, as we march for pay equity, as we teach and learn and live the ways and the language of love and inclusion. This is our known world. How does love live on? Through us, through our participation in the resurrection, through our conviction that resistance didn't die on the cross. It continued. It continues in us. Amen. Thank you. I don't usually get an applause. It's lovely having visitors. Now it's time to extinguish the chalice. Craig, would you? Thank you. And I invite you again, if you wish, to join me as we say the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Shortly we will have closing words, and after that we will enjoy Frank's Postlude, which is Easter Lilies by Catherine Bartley. And after that we will have time for a discussion, and the discussion question today is, how do you continue to love now? For those in the church, please form groups of no more than 6, and I will ring the bell after about 10 minutes, during which time Leo will be heating up the hot wok buns. There are more than you enjoyed before. They're nice and warm. Sorry, those on Zoom. I will put you in breakout rooms, and please stay as long as you wish and just leave as you choose. My closing words are a poem by Pablo Neruda called The Mountain and the River. In my country there is a mountain. In my country there is a river. Come with me. Night climbs up the mountain. Hunger goes down to the river. Come with me. Who are those who suffer? I do not know, but they are my people. Come with me. I do not know, but they call to me and they say to me, we suffer. Come with me. And they say to me, your people, your luckless people between the mountain and the river, with hunger and grief, they do not want to struggle alone. They are waiting for you, friend.